Hi, I'm Heidi Shorts. Welcome to another creative lettering art lesson. In the story Shipwrecked, we saw how Paul was very courageous, not afraid of being a prisoner, not afraid of standing trial before Caesar, not afraid of being shipwrecked. His courage came from his confidence in God, who can be trusted even when life around us is hard or doesn't seem to make sense. And because of Paul's courage in the face of difficulty, courage will be the word that we learn to creatively write today. When I think of the shipwreck in our story, I can just picture the planks of wood from the broken up ship floating all around the water. So for our lesson today, we're going to take those planks, some nails and a hammer, and we're going to use them to build our word courage. Really? Well, let's use our imaginations and get building. For our supplies, let's take a look at what we'll be needing. As usual, any plain white paper works just great. You'll need a number 2 pencil. You'll need to have a good white eraser so you can make any adjustments or corrections at any time during the lesson. You may need a pencil sharpener because we will be using those pencils and they will wear down over time. Any colored pencils will work just fine. Doesn't matter what brand, but a nice variety will usually work well for our lessons. Today in particular, we're going to be using shades of browns. You'll want to make sure that you have a ruler. You'll want to make sure that you have your extreme colors. And the colors we'll be using mostly today will be our yellows and our oranges. And we'll need a black light like this one, and if you don't have one, you can get one at seethelightshine.com. Okay, so let's get started. If we're going to create some lettering that looks like wood, it's probably helpful for us to take a look at an actual piece of wood. I have one here, and as you can see, my wood is very straight. It's actually very hard, and it doesn't bend very easily. So we have to keep that in mind when we're creating letters. Now obviously there are some letters that do bend, and so we're going to take a look at ways to modify our letters so that they look straight and strong like a piece of wood. Now, let's get started by using your ruler, your number 2 pencil, and your piece of paper. I'm going to use a regular colored pencil that's darker so that you can see it at home, but I'd like you to use your light number 2 pencil, nice light guidelines so that you can make corrections at any time. Now we're going to start by taking your ruler, placing it across your paper. Your paper's placed landscape style. Take your ruler and trace lightly along the top edge and along the bottom edge. Then you're going to take your ruler and scoot it above the top line that you've created. Lay it snugly against your paper so it doesn't wiggle, and trace along the top edge. Actually, our letters are going to extend over to the right-hand side of your paper. So if you want to take a minute and go back to your lines and just make them a bit longer, then you will have plenty of room to extend your lettering. There we go. And now we're ready. Our lettering is going to start along the top line that we've traced and extend down to the bottom line. And this line in the middle is kind of our halfway point, which will help us to gauge where we place our different strokes, our different marks. Okay? I'm done with my ruler. And now I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to start writing the word courage. Courage has 7 letters, so we're going to try and evenly space them across our paper. And we're going to start with the letter C. Now, as you know, the letter C is a round letter, but because we're working with boards, we're making this from wood, we're going to take that round C and we're going to kind of stretch it and straighten it out a little bit. So we're going to start by making a straight line along the back side, and then we're going to go across the top and the bottom of our line to make the C. Now we also know that the letter O is a round letter, but instead of thinking it in thinking of it in terms of an oval or a circle today. We're going to think of it more like a rectangle because we want those edges to be really straight. So again, we're going to scoot over a little bit. We're going to go down from the top to the bottom, go across the top, across the bottom, and then straight down again to create our rectangle, which will represent our letter O. These are all going to be capitals, by the way, and they're all going to be squared off because, as I mentioned, we are building them from wood. Our next letter is going to be a U. So we're going to try and scoot over about the same distance, top to bottom, across, top to bottom. And there we have our U. Now we're going to scoot over a little bit more, about the same distance, to create our R. And I'm going to start at the top, make a straight line down to the bottom, go across the top, and I'm going to come down to my middle line and back across. So I've made a rectangle in this space. Now from this corner down to my bottom line, I'm going to make a straight angled line to be the bottom leg of my letter R. I bet you're doing a great job with this at home. If you need to stop your video at any time to get caught up or to make any adjustments, feel free to do that. Now let's skip over a little ways and let's make our capital A. We're going to continue to make straight lines. This time we're going to make them angled, starting at the top, back to the left, up to the top, down to the right. And then instead of coming up here on this line to make our crossbar, I'm going to come down a little ways and I'm going to make it across right at this point. Okay? Scoot over a little bit more. We're going to make our capital G. This looks similar to our C, top, bottom. But now I'm going to come up to my middle line, and then I'm going to come back across a little ways. And there I have a capital G. Last letter is our capital E. Straight down from the top, across, across, and across. We have a nice bold word. We have the word courage. Obviously does not look like wood yet. So we want to go in now, second step, to start to make it look more sturdy and wood-like. Let's come back up. We're going to broaden each of these lines now. We're going to start to create the look of wood. And we're going to do that by making long, skinny rectangles. We're going to start back up here, come over a little ways, come down, and then I'm going to go across here and connect, across here and connect. Even though it doesn't look quite like wood yet, you can see that we are starting to have the rectangular shape, the broadness that you saw earlier in our piece of wood. Let's come over to the O. I'm going to come down, make a nice thick side, come across, and come down. So this rectangle will be the center of our O, whereas these are going to be the sides. Let's skip over to our U. We're going to come down inside the U to create a rectangle. We're going to come across the bottom. And then we're going to come back up here. Whoops, a little bit wavy, that's okay. You'll see later how we can take wavy lines and use those to our advantage. Let's skip over to the R. I'm going to make a thick side here and I'm going to run right over this angle. Not a problem. Connect your ends. I'm going to come back up to this box, the top part of my R, come across the top, come down the side, come across the bottom. Okay? Now I'm going to do something a little strange. I'm going to take this angled line on my R and I'm going to go on either side of it to create my rectangular shape. I'm going to come up here a little ways and I'm going to come down here a little ways and close it across the bottom. I have this line running down the middle. It doesn't matter. We're going to disguise that later. And actually, because you're using really light guidelines, you could even erase that at any point if that gets in your way or if that bothers you. Okay, skip over to the A. Let's come inside the A. And we're going to make a rectangular shape, but obviously at the top we have this angle, so it's not going to be an exact rectangle. Over to the side, we're going to do the same thing, close it at the bottom, and then from this line that we made a little bit earlier, we're going to come down and make a rectangle or a rectangular shape below as our crossbar on the A. Now let's take a look at our G. Come down on the side, across the top and connect, across the bottom, on the side, and then this funny little place right here, we make a little square. Okay? Very last one, the E, come down the side, across the top and connect, across the middle and connect, and across the bottom and connect. All right, we have a nice bold courage. Looking better? Not quite like wood yet. If you need to stop at any point, make any adjustments, feel free to do that. If you want to erase and move things around, this is a great time to do it. You also can go in and you can erase these guidelines that you made with your ruler because you don't need those anymore. Okay? Now, the next thing you're going to do, when you take a look at my piece of wood, now remember, we've got the idea that this was in a shipwreck. And so we have actually a jagged edge because that ship was broken apart. Those planks have been broken up in the water. And we want to give that same kind of feel to our word courage. So we're going to come through here, and on each of the edges we're going to add a little bit of a jagged line which will suggest to us the feeling of broken wood. I'm going to put one there. I'm going to put a jagged line there. I think I could even put one up here. These are just random. I mean, think about it. There has been a shipwreck, and so we're not going to have perfectly spaced or placed places where the wood has been broken. It's probably going to be different for each piece. So you can see how I'm making some jaggedy edges. Some of the wood is actually even overlapping as we start to construct it. As a matter of fact, let me show you. I have a piece of wood here and I have one here. So if I have a piece that's overlapping, you do not see the jagged edge over here because it's behind. So for your lettering, you can also see how some of these look like they might be placed one behind the other. Okay, let's take a look at this one. I'm going to put a really good jagged edge on this A right down here. I think I'm going to leave that one as is. Okay. Okay, now we have the beginning of some jagged wood. We want to nail these pieces together. As they are right now, they're placed together, but they're not very secure. So you can go back in and let's add some nails. And you can randomly put them in anywhere that you like to suggest that you have had a hammer. And I'm actually going to bring this up a little ways more. I'm the one building this letter, so I can put these wherever I want. Let's see, let's put two here. Let's put some here. Okay, so little dots all over, nailing my wood together. Okay, so you can see how this is really starting to take some shape. Now, in order for us to make this look really like wood, it's really going to be helpful to take a look at a real piece of wood. Before we get started, Let's go back to our wood, and you can see all the graining that gives it its character. When lumber goes through a mill and is cut, it raises the grain of the wood, and you can see the different shapes and swirls that make it characteristically look like the wood that we know. And I'm going to think of this in terms of lines, interlocking C's and V's, and knot holes, and I'll show you in just a moment what I mean. So let's make sure you have your jagged lines, your rectangles in place, and your nails. In order for us to be ready for all the different graining in our wood, go ahead and take your dark brown pencil, and let's go ahead and outline each of your letters. It gives us a nice foundation to work from. Okay? So let's take a look now at how we can create that grain onto this word. The first thing I mentioned were lines. Very simple. Little short squiggly lines give us the impression of wood grain. Another thing that we sometimes use to create the look of grain are what I like to call interlocking C's and V's, which are the letter C or the letter V. And I'm going to take a small little C down here, and I'm going to interlock a larger, longer C, and then I'm going to interlock from that an even larger C. And you can see how it mimics a little bit the shape of the grain that you often see in wood. And then I'm going to add a couple of those little squiggly lines. Okay? Now as far as interlocking V's, here I have a V shape. I'm going to come down and I'm going to make another V shape. And then I'm going to come down a little longer and make another V shape. Add a few more of my little squiggly lines. And you can see how this is beginning to look like the grain of wood. Now, one of the other things I mentioned was a knot hole, and you often see knot holes in wood. And I'm going to create that look by using a swirl. I'm just going to take my pencil and create a swirl-like shape. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a few more squiggly lines around it. You can never have too many squiggly lines. They work really well to make your wood look like wood. I'm going to come back down here, make some squiggles. I'm going to make some C's and some V's. Now this is where you can use your imagination. It doesn't really matter what order they go in. This wood is random. Every piece of wood is unique and different. So I'm going to continue to add my C's, my V's, my little lines, my squiggly lines, and my knot holes to complete the rest of my word courage. If you'd like to turn off your video to take the time that you need to put graining into all of your letters, you may do that. I don't want you to feel rushed. If you'd like to watch me do mine, you may do that as well. But remember, these letters are random. It does not matter what order you put these shapes and designs in. It will look fabulous. Okay, we've just finished all of our letters. As you can see, you have a random mix of different shapes and designs across your letters. It's really starting to look more wood-like, don't you think? I'm loving the way this is coming together. Now we're going to put aside your dark brown, and let's take a light brown pencil if you happen to have one. If not, use your dark brown pencil and just don't press quite as hard. And we're going to go back through and we're going to add some color to our wood. Now because we're using a darker color, or we're pressing not quite as hard with our original brown pencil, you can see the grain lines showing up against this background. And if you color in the direction of your grain lines, it will look even more like wood. Now I'm not doing this perfectly. I'm leaving some spaces uncolored, and you'll see why in just a minute. Going with the grain, now up and down with the grain. And this is actually a good time. You may need your pencil sharpener because you're using quite a bit of brown, and you may need to sharpen your pencil. Almost done. I've got these little boards here that have helped me to create my letters. And my last letter. I have my E, across, and then down. Okay, so our word courage is starting to really look like wood. I am going to add a little bit more color, and that's because wood often has other tones in it besides just brown. Even though we think of brown usually when we think of wood, sometimes wood has a yellow tone to it, or sometimes a little bit of an orange tone. And so instead of using my regular colored pencils, I'm going to use my extreme colors for this part of my illustration. I'm going to go in and use the lightest yellow and the lightest orange. The yellow is Lemon Glacier and the orange is Heat Wave. And I'm going to go back through and I'm going to go over my letters just a little bit to give it a little more of the feel of wood grain. And as I do this, some of those places that maybe did not pick up the brown color, where you can see the white poking through, those places may now get covered up with some of my extreme colors. You can see how the wood tones are starting to look a little warmer. They're starting to come to life a little bit and look more realistic. So as you do this, if you'd like to turn off your video, take a little time, you may do that as well. Okay, we are almost done. Now it actually might be kind of fun for you. We've been doing this under regular light, but as you add these extreme colors, it might be kind of fun to turn your lights out, turn on your black light, and then add your extreme colors and see how it looks. You can probably make adjustments that way and see where you'd like more color or less color. Okay? Don't our letters look great? They look like we've created them out of wood that's been floating around in that water from the shipwreck. We've nailed them together, and we've now created the word courage. So now, let's take our black light and let's see what our word courage looks like. I hope you enjoy practicing the skills that you've learned today. When you think about the word courage and you think of how you've built that on a piece of paper with colored pencils, think about ways that you can build courage into your own life. Think of ways that you can take God's truth and build that into your heart and into the way that you live. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again for another Creative Lettering Art lesson.